Hey everyone, and welcome back to another episode of City Skylines in our city, Lakewood. In this episode, we're going to be adding another outside connection to the city. So far, we've actually solely been relying on the highway as an outside connection, so I think that it's about time that we added something else. And the outside connection that we're going to be adding is a train connection. So if you'll recall, we actually started our city in the bottom right-hand tile over here, and we weren't able to add a train connection until we unlocked these top two tiles. And now it's been a little while since we unlocked those tiles, but admittedly I have been having some trouble trying to figure out exactly how I want to connect our local train network to the regional train network. You may have noticed some tracks that I've already placed that aren't actually connected to anything. We have this one here that runs parallel to the border of the city, near the university campus and high density area, as well as this one over here that's parallel to the highway near the farming, forestry, and fishing industries. Now the reason for those tracks is that they are placeholders. I knew that I wanted to have cargo trains going through those areas, but as I said, I wasn't exactly sure how I wanted to connect everything together. So now that I've figured out what I want to do, it's going to be relatively easy for me to go and just connect our train tracks together without having to go through and delete and rearrange everything. So what I've come up with is maybe not the most efficient way to connect our local train network to the regional train network, but I'm really happy with how it turned out, and it does work. So I think it's about time that we got started, and I hope you enjoy. This is the area that I've decided to use as the connection between our local and regional train networks, and I've actually already gone ahead and flattened out the area, getting ready for us to start building. You can actually see the height difference between where the track is versus the terrain on either side, so the last thing that we need to do before we start building is to just level everything out and relay that track. So what I'm going to do, I'm just going to pause the game here for a minute. You can see that the track has a slight curve going through the area. So what I want is I actually want to continue the track out straight for a little bit and then have it curve near the end. So we're just going to delete everything for right now and just relay the track through that area. So the design goal for what I want to do is I want to have something that kind of mimics what a train yard looks like in real life. So if you've ever been to or seen a train yard in real life, it has lots of parallel tracks. Now obviously trains in real life aren't quite exactly how they are in the game here. There's no switching of tracks really, and there's no changing of cars and things like that. So the train yard isn't going to be exactly what it would be like in real life, but it'll have a similar visual appearance. So it will get a little bit confusing. I've admittedly done this ahead of time just to make sure everything kind of works out before I showed everybody what it was going to be like. So I do have some screenshots off to the side here that I'm going to be using as a little bit of a guide for myself, and I honestly will still possibly get a little bit confused at some of the points here. So if you're a little bit confused, don't worry, you're not going to be the only one, and in the end, I will have an overview of all the tracks that I'm going to be putting in, so stay tuned for that, but I'm going to do my best to try and kind of explain what I'm doing as I go. So now that we have this flat track in here, what we're going to do is we are going to just put a road through the area that we're going to use to put our transportation hub. So the whole area itself is actually going to be more of a transportation hub than something that's solely designed for trains. Now trains will be a pretty big focus, but I'm also going to have the metro, monorail, a tram connection, and even an intercity bus depot. So from here, I want to just go up 2.5 grid squares from the track and run a road parallel to that track that we just put in. And we'll bring it to, say, about here. I'm just using the 2-lane road right now as a little bit of a template. We'll upgrade that to the 4-lane collector road here in just a second. We're actually going to connect it to the 4-lane collector road here, and then again just at the end over here. And I want to keep this 6-lane arterial road. Eventually I'm going to have something on the other side of the track over here, so I want to make sure that there is a connection to the city that we've already designed and developed. So what I'm going to do, I'm just going to delete that for now and then actually elevate it. Just one elevation step up and then across the road and the track here. And I'll leave it like that for now. Obviously, once I eventually figure out what I want to do on the other side of the track, we will kind of adjust that as we need it. But for now, just to kind of have it as a placeholder, we'll leave it like that. Now we are probably going to have an issue with the support for that overpass right here, and there is a trick that we can use to get around that. And if we do have an issue with that, I will show everybody that trick. It's pretty neat. But for now, until it's a problem, we're just going to leave it as it is. So for here, I did mention that I will be having more of a hub, so it makes sense that we would go into a pre-made public transportation hub and use the Metro monorail train hub and place one just right here for us to use. I'm going to go ahead and turn that off right away. Obviously, we do have a Metro monorail train hub already right here, so eventually when I set this online, we will actually just remove this one and then connect the monorail track that I already have there, just go a little bit further and hook it up to this other transportation hub over here. Not really much point in having them that close. Even this one over here is a little bit close, but I think it'll be all right. So another thing that I want to have in this area is I also want to put in a cargo hub, or pardon me, a cargo train terminal. So we're just going to have that a little bit further down the road, just right over here. So we're also going to turn that off for now. And you can see the reason why I wanted to have everything parallel is that the tracks for these ones also match up pretty nicely. And it's going to make it a lot easier for us to tie in any of these tracks to the regional train network. So for now, also what I want to do, just to get started, is just put in a couple tracks that run parallel to the regional train track as well as the track that is going through our hub right here. So I'm just going to put two right here, just to give everybody an idea of what I want to do. I'm going to have a bunch of tracks running parallel through this area here and then hook everything together and then eventually into the regional train network. So you can see that it is going to be a little bit confusing, but like I said, I will try and explain as best I can as we go and also have an overview at the very end. Okay, so now that we have that in place, the next thing that I want to do is start bringing up some of the tracks from over here near the farming, forestry, and fishing industries. We already have this track right here, so this will eventually go over across here to the industrial area. And that's already close to where I want to have it, but this one over here we need to start bringing up and tie everything together. So one of the issues that I did have was I needed to try and figure out a way to have the train track going over the interchange here without having to do too many modifications or changes. So I know not very many people are a fan of the tunnels that I've been putting in, so I want to try and avoid having too many tunnels. Obviously that's not something you can avoid everywhere, and I will be putting in some tunnels, but we'll talk about that a little bit later. For now though, I think getting an overpass through here for our trains will look nice. So what I've found is that if you go to the intersection between this node right here and this node right about here, it doesn't always hook up to the node right there for some reason, doesn't always snap to it. So you kind of move your mouse around a little bit until you get to the point where it hooks in, then click, and then we can bring that across. And that's actually a very good spot to have it because it doesn't interfere with any of the other roadways that we already have in place. And so from here, we're going to just turn off our road guidelines for now. And I'm going to bring the track one grid square away and then have it go down to the ground. We could have it a little bit closer, have a little bit of a steeper slope. But I mean, it's maybe a little bit too steep, but we have the room, and it just makes sense, I think, that we kind of extend that a little bit and then have a little bit more of a gradual slope. There will be a few that we're going to put in over here that we're not going to have so much room to put in nice gradual slopes, so we'll kind of just have to live with what we can over here given the space restrictions that we'll have. So we'll turn our road guidelines back on, and then we will bring this down over here. So eventually these two tracks will hook up with the track that I've already placed over here, but for now we're just going to bring it to the shore and then continue on back across over to the regional train network over here. So I want to try and keep it tight, pardon me, to the highway that we have over here. So I'm going to bring it over just for now. We're going to turn off road guidelines again. Run one grid square away from that, and we're going to go road guidelines back on and go parallel to those tracks just above. And then what we can do is just delete these two segments and then curve our tracks back up to there. Obviously, it's not that much of a difference, but I think if we can have as much room as we can maybe put in I'm not sure what we're going to do over here, residential or commercial or something like that. And it'll give us a little bit more room to be able to do that. So we're going to do the same thing just on the other side over here. Bring our track down to the ground about 1 grid square away. And then continue on the ground 1 grid square from that. And then go across up to the other side. All right, now we're going to bring these just straight up to the regional train network. Okay, so from here, these two tracks are going to connect up to these two tracks over here that we've already just put in that run parallel to the regional train network and the transportation hub. So what I'm going to do is I'm actually going to put in a couple tracks just right here like this. We're going to find a straight section of our regional train network and have some parallel tracks to that. And then I can use the curved track tool and then kind of curve that around here rather than trying to freeform, which I actually could do and it would turn out pretty nice. But I think if we can avoid using that and try and use the snaps, it will line up a little bit better. So we're going to bring this out a little bit here. And then use our curve track tool to bring this across. There, I think that looks pretty good. And then I'm just going to go ahead and delete some of these older ones back here. And that'll give us a nice curve to kind of hook everything up together. And I know somebody did make a comment in a previous video. I do not use the shortcuts for the bulldozer. I know using the B key would be a little bit easier, but I'm kind of stuck in my ways. It'll take me a little bit of time to get used to clicking the B key, but I'm trying. So we'll just bring these up, hook up into these tracks that we already have. Okay, that looks pretty good right now. And now what we're going to do is we are going to give our trains an option to go off to the left side onto the regional train network. So in order to do that, what we're going to do is we are going to run another track just parallel to the regional train network right here. As best we can anyway, I think we should use the freeform tool for this part and then just try and connect it up as best we can. Okay, and we're going to have this come straight across like this. Let's go to about here, and then we're actually going to elevate this part of our track. Make that straight across as best we can. See if we can get it for us to do that. Maybe not. Oh, that's weird. If you use the straight track tool, it's not going to let us go, but if you use the freeform tool, it will. So I guess we'll be using the freeform tool to do this one, and we're actually going to bring this back down. Okay, and then we're going to do is we are going to connect this track here on the left to this track over here. So we're going to also run another parallel track. This is going to be a theme, having parallel tracks running together. Actually, pull it a little bit back. And then again, we're using the freeform track tool. We are going to hook everything together as best we can. Oh, missed the spot just over here. Get this connected. There we go. So now, trains coming from our forestry, farming, and fishing industries can either go to the left and rejoin the regional train network, or they can go off to the right side over here. Okay, so now what we're going to do, actually curve this a little bit in too much. So we're just going to delete that for now. And we are going to run another parallel track. So one of these tracks will come from the transportation hub this time. So we're going to go using this one right here. Just bring that down a little bit more. And then we are going to run this track parallel to the right-hand side track right here. So eventually what we're going to hopefully have in our city is we are going to have another train hub, maybe somewhere over here, transportation hub, pardon me. So that way what we can do is we can have some of our public transportation going straight from a transportation hub in this area of our city to the main transportation hub over here. So the idea is to have one of our tracks run parallel and then eventually join up with this one here so that it can go down over to this area of our city. So we'll do that real quick and we'll just run another parallel track right here. Actually, I don't know, that might be a little bit tight. So I'm going to delete this for now and just go back and redo that here in just a minute. So we're going to switch back to the curve track tool and bring this across to this track right here. Tie everything together. It separates a little bit, but that's not too bad. I'm not going to worry too much about that. Okay, and then we are going to tie that into the train network that we already have, the train track, pardon me. Have that down there like that. Okay, cool. We're going to hook back the bridge that we have right here, just set it back up. Just come across and then back down. Tie everything together. So now this one will go into the other track that goes into the transportation hub that we have here. And that will allow regional passenger trains to join the local train network that we have over here and drop passengers off at the Metro Monorail train hub. And we're just going to add one more segment of track at the top section here before we move on to the next area. And we're going to add it in this triangular area right here. But I think we need to give ourselves a little bit more room. So what I'm going to do is I'm actually going to relay this overpass track that we have here and have it curve around a little, just a little bit more, following the other track that we have here and then back across to the other side. I think that gives us just enough room for putting in the other track just at the very top. So we're going to have it straight across here and then join up with the other two tracks that we have. Now this might not make much sense right now, but in the bigger picture, once we get all of the other tracks in, it will be necessary for the other trains that we're going to be having going through the area. I hope everyone is still with me so far. The first part that we did really wasn't too bad, but this next area over here might be a little bit more confusing. We're actually going to start by just extending the tracks that we already have underneath of the overpass. And unfortunately, it looks like, as expected, we are starting to have some issues with the supports for that overpass interfering with the tracks that we're trying to put down. As I mentioned at the beginning of the video, there is actually a trick that we can use to avoid this problem. This is something that I learned from another YouTuber named Imperatur. I'm sure most of you are already watching his videos or have at least heard of his channel, but if not, I will link it in the top right-hand corner of this video, and I will also link his channel and the specific video that I'm talking about in the description below. What we're going to do is we are going to delete the excess bit of overpass that we have and put it back in right away here. Now, instead of extending our overpass as far as it was before, we are going to just extend it as little as possible. So I'm going to do this from the side here so we can see the change. And it looks like right about here is as short a distance as the game's going to let us do it. So we'll put that in and we can see that the support pillar has now moved from in between the two tracks here to the side of the outermost track over here. Now there's a couple reasons for that, and one of them is that the game does not like to have support pillars too close together. It also doesn't want to have no support on the outermost section of our overpass. So it always wants to have a support pillar on the last segment that you put. It does not like to have a large overhang. And the third reason is we actually have tracks further over here, and it's preventing the game from putting another support pillar in between the two support pillars that are already here. Had there been no tracks, I would imagine that the game would have put one right here if it could. So now that we have that support pillar out of the way, we are actually going to fill that gap with our track, and then we're also going to extend this overpass a little bit further. Just do it little bit by little bit, short a distance as we can. Do it from the top angle this time, it's a little bit easier that way. And you can see again, the support pillar has moved from where it was before. So for the same reasons, we now have tracks here, so it's preventing the game from putting a support pillar in between. It also does not want to have support pillars too close together, and it needs to have a support pillar on the outside edge. So in theory, if we wanted to, we could actually extend the number of tracks that we have through this area as far as we wanted to, as long as we continue to put in tracks in the gaps that we are creating as we slowly extend our overpass through the area. And now I think 5 tracks is going to be more than enough for what we want to do, so I will leave it as it is. And as I said at the beginning again, once I figure out exactly what I want to do over here, we will continue this overpass, and then we will have it go down somewhere and hook up to the rest of our city. But for now, I think we will leave it as it is and continue on with our trains. And now that we've got that out of the way, the next step is going to be just to continue everything along and making sure everything gets connected together. And that, unfortunately, is where the confusion is going to start. So over here, we had a decent amount of room. There's lots of tracks, but it's relatively easy to tell where everything is going, and we do have, like I said, lots of room to do so. Over here, the space is a little bit tighter, and so the connections between the different tracks is going to be a little bit less obvious, so it may be a little bit more confusing. Now, as I mentioned at the beginning, I will have an overview at the end, so hopefully, if you're a little bit confused, the overview will clear everything up. So we're going to continue on with these 2 tracks right here. And these 2 tracks are the 2 tracks that we have going and curving along and going back towards the fishing, farming, and forestry industries. So with these tracks, I did actually also run into another problem, which I will show everybody just right now, and we'll go back and correct the problem. So my original plan was to have it come along just to, say, about here, curve down, connect to our cargo terminal here, and then have another parallel line that runs just beside that, and do the same thing with the other line coming from the fishing, farming, and forestry industries. I was going to have this line here connect to the regional line just on the side. And if we do that, you can see that the game has actually allowed us to connect our tracks. But if we take a look at the tracks themselves, we can see that there are actually no tracks on the right-hand side over here. So the rails themselves have been put on the left, and you can see that they're connected to the regional track. But the rails have not been put on the right-hand side, so they're not actually connected to the track over here. Despite the game allowing us to put this segment in, it isn't actually connected to anything. And I believe the reason for that is that the angle that this track is coming into the other one is a little bit too sharp. So for whatever reason, the game has allowed us to put the track in, but nothing is actually connected. So if you're going to be doing any sort of tight connections between your tracks, you need to make sure that you zoom in and double check and make sure that your tracks are actually generated and attached together before you go and move forward with your track. So it's a little bit weird, but for whatever reason, that is what has happened. So to fix that, what I have done is instead of having the tracks come out this far, I actually start curving them in a little bit further back here. So we'll do that, and we'll just connect it up as it is right here, and do the same with that other side track. And then what we're going to do is we are going to have, let's see if it's going to let us do this, have another track connected to it here that runs parallel, and it's just going to connect up to the regional track like that. So if we zoom in now, that the angle is a little bit more gradual, we can see that the game has actually put in the rails for both of our tracks, and now they are connected together. So now that we have that, we are going to continue on here. And so some of the things that I'm doing, it's going to maybe not make quite as much sense. So similar to this segment that I put in here, I'm going to be doing some stuff over here that won't make sense until I put in the other tracks afterwards. So for right now, we are just focusing on the 2 tracks that are going to the fishing, farming, and forestry industry. So we're going to continue these along, and we are actually going to bring them down just to the right further here. So as I bring it down to this other side here, we can see that we are starting to have a little bit of an issue with the original track that I had here, the placeholder track that I put in for the industrial area, and the regional track, and these new 2 tracks right here. You can see that things aren't quite lining up as they should. It looks like this track is at a little bit of a different angle than everything else. So what I'm going to do is I'm actually going to delete that track for now. We're going to put it in eventually afterwards, but I'm just going to delete that right now so that we can kind of get everything sorted out, and then we'll relay it and make sure that it's nice and parallel to all the other tracks that we've put in. So I'm going to actually double check the regional track here, and you can see that actually the regional track isn't quite straight across the map here either. So our parallel tracks are actually going to diverge a little bit near the border of the city. So what I'd like to do, just to make my life a little bit easier, I am going to delete most of the regional track and then just relay it and make it nice and straight, and then connect it back up a little bit further along here, just so that when I'm connecting everything in the area here, it's a little bit easier for myself. So our bottom track here from the fishing, farming, and forestry industry is just actually going to come along here. And while we have that, we are actually going to stop it there for now. And we are going to put the track going down to the industrial area back in, because eventually it's going to curve around here and tie into that. So our industrial track will actually go parallel to the 3 tracks that we have here. So I'm going to bring that along to about here. I'm going to turn off all of my snaps and go back to the freeform tool. And then I am actually going to put that in. Actually, what I'm going to do, I'm going to bring that back. I'm going to make this curve through here rather than where it was before. So you can see where it was before. We have the gap and the trees here. I'm going to do that a little bit tighter to the high density area that we have, because I do have another set of tracks going in right in this section here. So we'll put that in. So not too much of a difference. You can see, like I said, the gap and the trees where the old track used to be. So we'll just come down here. Do our best to tie everything together. Let's actually start from here and use our road guidelines to connect to that other track. I think that'll look a little bit smoother. There we go. And then we can actually continue our bottom track from the farming, fishing, and forestry industry down around here. Let's actually turn our road guidelines back off. And then we can tie everything together. So we'll just tie it in like that. That will be good. And then we're also going to have a couple more splits coming off of these 2 lines. So we're going to have this one going, connecting directly to the industrial line as well. So the difference between these 2 lines is that the bottom line is going to cross through the cargo terminal, but the top line is not. It's going to have a direct route going to the industrial area below. So that's the same for the reverse. So we'll have the industrial area will now have a direct line going to the farming, fishing, and forestry industries. And the bottom line here, we are going to actually elevate that. So we're going to come off from that again, right about here. We'll turn off our guidelines. Come into this middle section in between the 2 tracks. Go straight a little bit and then elevate. Now we can cross over. Back down. And then rejoin the regional track. Okay, so that is it for the 2 lines coming from our farming, fishing, and forestry industry, the triple F area. I guess I could maybe shorten that a little bit instead of saying that long name every time. But we should be done with that section by now. And the next part that we're going to do is we are going to finish the lines coming from our metro, monorail, and train hub. So we have 2 lines, but luckily for us, this top line, we're actually going to stop it right there. We're not going to go any further with that. We're just going to kind of leave it in there just for appearances and just to confuse ourselves a little bit more, but it's not going anywhere. So what we'll do with the bottom line, originally my plan was, let me just bring it across, we were going to elevate this line, have it come across here. But it looks like there are going to be some issues with the track that I have here. I've extended this out a little bit more than what I originally had. I think it used to be back a little bit further here and connected up. But I kind of like the way this one looks. So instead, I think we are going to have a tunnel. I think that'll work, just going through this area. And we're going to bring it underground instead of trying to go over everything. I think that'll make our lives a little bit easier. We are actually going to hook that up to a track that goes in between everything here. So we'll have that. Actually, let's bring that back a little bit further. Just reduce the amount of empty space we have, just to try and fill it out a little bit more, make it look like a little bit more filled in. Yeah, I think that looks a little bit better. So we get those connected. And now this track will tie into the regional track as well. Bring it down a little bit further. So that'll be for our regional passengers. They will come from our hub right here and be able to rejoin the regional train track. And the same for people coming from the opposite direction. So trains coming from the regional network can now join the hub over here and then transfer to the local transport network in our city. And what do we have next? Let me just look at my cheat sheet over here. The next bit that we have to finish off is the line coming from the industrial area. So we have this line coming from our industrial area right here, and it comes up and it actually right now it terminates right here. So we want to give our industrial trains the option to go either to the left on our regional line or to the right on the regional line. So we do have this segment right here. I did put that in when we were fixing the support pillars for our overpass. So we are going to actually elevate our track again. We'll come up and across. Actually, let's extend this out just so we can get an idea of where the track is, and actually elevate that up. So now we can tie everything together. So the reason why I have this track extending as far as it is over here, I don't have it connecting right here. I could, but I do have these 2 connections to the regional track right here already. So I didn't want to have a third connection to the regional track close to these other 2. So I just extended everything down a little bit further, and I'll have it rejoin the regional track over on the other side over here. And now that that's in, the last connection that we have is the connection for the industrial line. That's this one here on the left, going to the regional line right here that's going down and off of the screen. So we're going to do a little bit of a half loop kind of a thing. So we'll have it come off. I'm going to just turn off. I'm going to start it actually. I'm going to start our track so that we are equidistant away from the industrial line right here. I'm going to turn off my snaps and turn on the freeform tool. Just have something that kind of comes and curves around section here. And try and line it up close to parallel to the regional track. And then have it connect up like that. And then we can have this train line now connect to the industrial track. There we go. Okay, now I believe that is everything for this area right here. And now obviously the next part that we are going to have to cover is the connection of the cargo terminals in the FFF industrial area and the cargo terminal that we need to put in our generic industrial area. So for this one here, let's actually just start here. We can see that I have a ton of these geothermal power plants, and I'm burning just over $1,000 a week on each of these. So 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12. $12,000 in upkeep for our power each week for our city. So I think what we should do, we should actually switch to a nuclear power plant. And we are going to save, let's see, 640 megawatt production for our nuclear power plant for $8,000 per week. And we are just above that for our city right now at 5 megawatts below 700. So we could use one nuclear power plant and maybe a couple geothermal power plants just to make sure we're above. Or we could actually put in 2 nuclear power plants, which I think is what I'm going to do, and just reduce the budget of our power so that we're producing just what we need and hopefully saving on the cost, the weekly cost of having 2 nuclear power plants. So I'll put those in and we'll see the power production of our city now 2200, and then I can go back and just delete some of these geothermal plants. Actually, I'm going to delete all of them. Now that they're out of the way, we'll go back and check out our electricity production. And we can see with 2 nuclear power plants, we are well above the amount of electricity that we need. So I'm going to open the budget panel and open the electricity panel back up. And then we can go to our electricity production here and actually reduce our budget. Let's try, let's see, 70%. Ooh, that's 100 megawatts over what we need. So I think that will be good for, oh no, maybe not. I don't know what happened there. We jumped down. Let's go back up to 80. And it looks like we're just over 100 megawatts over the amount of electricity that our city is consuming. And that's going to free up a little bit of space for us to put in a cargo terminal here for our industrial area. So I am going to just do that right now. And put it in right here. So there's another trick that I did learn from yet another YouTuber, jester.Gaming. Again, I'm sure most of you have already seen his videos, but if not, I will link his channel up in the top right-hand corner and down below in the description. And also the video that he went over this topic. And one of the things that he did go over was traffic going by your cargo terminals. You want to make sure that your traffic comes from, let me just actually adjust the view. Your traffic is going along the street, and your cargo terminal is on the side of the street where your traffic approaching the cargo terminal goes along the side where these shipping containers are. So that the way that the vehicles are entering and exiting the cargo terminal here, they actually interfere with one another if the cars are coming from the other direction. So if we have it lined up here, the traffic traveling along the right side of our road is going to be approaching the cargo terminal from the container side of the terminal itself. So just to make things a little bit smoother, you want to make sure for optimization that you're doing that for your train terminal here. And actually I see we are having a little bit of a slowdown with our traffic going in the industrial area here. So I'm just going to take out these stop signs. I think that'll be a little bit smoother for our vehicles leaving the area. So for our train tracks here, it's not going to be anything nearly as complicated as what we did up top. We're just going to have it come down go into a tunnel. I know people don't like tunnels, but I'm going to cheat again here a little bit. The way that this highway is angled, trying to get a elevated track across here is a little bit difficult. And same with right here. I'm actually going to cheat a little bit again and go into a tunnel just under this area. Maybe in the future, when I have a little bit more time to kind of fiddle around with it, we'll figure something out that looks a little bit better. But for now, I think tunnels will be a quick solution so that we can get our train network going. And it looks like I'm not quite parallel to the city boundary here. You can see that eventually as we got down here, I'm actually now interfering with the border of the city. So I'm just going to turn the snaps off and freeform put this in just like that. We'll have everything connected up. Turn our snaps on, get this, try and get a good angle. Yeah, that's not too bad. The terrain kind of went a little bit weird there. See if we can maybe smooth that out. If not, we can just have our tunnel extend a little bit further down. I'm not quite sure I like that little hump that's in the middle. I don't know what's going on there. Let's just delete that. And have our tunnel come up over there instead. Let's go down underground again. There we go. Again, this is just temporary for now. I don't know. I don't know why I even came up above ground right here. It seems kind of pointless, but we'll leave it in, and we can see the trains going through the area. So the next cargo terminals to hook up are these two over here. We can see that the traffic going through our industrial area, we are having some issues over here. Not too bad. It kind of clears itself up. Every once in a while, traffic kind of hangs up whenever vehicles are going, cargo trucks are going into some of the industrial buildings and things like that, especially around the warehouses. I'm sure all of you know those are kind of some tricky spots for traffic to start building up, but it's really not too bad. Things start to clear up in not too much time. So I think if and when we enable our cargo terminals, we'll see that a lot of the truck traffic that we're having going through here is going to be focused on the cargo terminals instead of going in and out of the industrial area. So I think that is going to be a little bit quicker to ship things, to export them out of our city. So I'm going to use the freeform no snap track again. And we're actually just going to come along here. Try not destroy our cool looking volcano mountain here that I've inadvertently made a couple episodes ago. I think I'm going to make this look a little bit better at some point, but right now I really like how it looked with this kind of caldera looking thing up at the top. I want to make this into some kind of cool feature eventually, but for now we'll just make sure we don't destroy it making our trains. I think we're gonna elevate instead of going underground. Looks like we already have a tunnel there, so we will come up above and then across. Looks like we're going to destroy a power line, so I'm just going to double check and make sure we have power connected somewhere else. And it looks like we do. We have power coming across the highway over to here, and then everything else is connected. So we can actually get rid of this power line that we have here. And actually maybe not for our radio tower. We'll just connect that back up. Just like that. And then we can have this track come back down to the ground. Okay, and this one's going to be also pretty easy. So as I mentioned before, eventually, maybe, possibly, I'm going to have a passenger line being able to come down this way and then around somewhere. So I'm going to extend that track just a little bit here as a placeholder for myself, just so I can kind of have that in the back of my mind, kind of thinking about what I want to do. And we're just going to connect this up kind of like that. And you see, here's another example of the game allowing you to do something but not putting in any tracks. As far as I know, trains are unable to traverse this kind of terrain, or pardon me, this kind of track. So the track's there, but the rails aren't. So I don't know why it does that. And as far as I know, trains are unable to cross over that area. So that corner is no good for us. So we'll just delete it and try something else. Maybe if we do curved road tool from there and then across. There we go. That looks much nicer. And then here we go. Again, tracks aren't connected, so we will try something different. We'll just delete that. And then hook up to here maybe. And then come at a little bit of an angle. Not sure I'm going to like how that's going to set up. So come from this side. Let's see. Maybe turn some of those on. No, let's actually turn those off. We'll come parallel to the track if we can. Let's see if we can connect before it goes underground. Oh, not quite. Let's delete some of this. There, that's not too bad. But you can see now we actually have rails going to the tracks, so everything should be good. And what I've done, what I've done is I have actually gone and I've renamed the cargo terminals here. So we have the forestry train terminal, we have the farming train terminal. Our fishing industry doesn't have a train terminal, but it can just as easily use the train terminal for the farming industry right here. And I'm going to go ahead and I am actually going to rename this terminal here as well. We're going to call this the industrial train terminal. And the reason for that is when your trains leave these terminals or when trains are coming to the terminals, it will actually tell you. So it'll be called industrial train or industrial terminal train or something like that. Or it'll say transporting goods to the farming train terminal or whatever. And it just makes it a little bit easier to kind of track and see where things are going rather than having, you know, every train saying transporting goods to the cargo train terminal and you have no idea which one, especially when you have multiple train terminals throughout your city. And it looks like the very last thing that we have to do is we have to make a bridge over here for our trains going to the FFF industrial area. So we will have some bridges coming across here. Let's turn our snaps on and make sure they're nice and straight across the river. And I want to see if I can try and make it so that the bridge is somewhat in the middle of the river. So we'll go right to there. And then extend it past that. I think that looks pretty cool. We are having some issues with the terrain here, but it's not too bad. That'll be something that maybe we fix in the future. I'm not going to worry too much about it right now. I mean, it's in real life, I could see terrain being like that, just kind of a sharp drop off. But I think in the future, we will probably just lower this area right here a little bit. But that is for a future episode, I think. So let's just actually bring this across here and hook into that track. Actually, it might be easier to do with this one. Yeah, let's bring this down. Tie into that. And then we will bring this down a little bit further and tie everything together. Okay, I think that is all the tracks that we're going to be putting in for this episode. And it's time for an overview of everything that we just did. All right, so for a relatively quick overview of all of the different tracks that we put in our city today, there's going to be some repetition because everything is so interconnected. So if I describe a pathway as, the cargo terminals from the Triple F industrial area going to the cargo terminal of our transport hub, the same is for the reverse. So the cargo terminal at the transport hub is connected to the cargo terminals of the Triple F industrial area over here. Now we're going to start actually just on the industrial area over here, and I'm going to switch to the road tool just so it's a little bit easier maybe to see my cursor, because it does have that kind of bullseye thing going on with the road placement tool. So hopefully that'll make it a little bit easier for everybody to see where I'm pointing as I talk. So we have our industrial area here, and we do have the industrial area cargo terminal, and it's going to go on the track here and come up towards the regional track. And these industrial trains will have an option to take this fork and go on the right side and go off onto the regional track, traveling right out of the city. They also have the option to continue along and then go continue straight and go along this middle track here. And then this middle track will come up to this fork here, and then the train can go to the right and over this overpass and then back down along this track here and join the regional track and go to the left and out of the city. Going back to that fork, it can take that fork and it will join this track right here. And this track, if you follow it along, will go, and that is one of the two parallel tracks that actually curve around here and go back down towards the farming, fishing, and forestry industries. Now going back to this area over here, we went over the right-hand track, we went over the middle track, and now it can also take this left-hand track right here and come along and go to our cargo train terminal in the transportation hub, or it can continue along afterwards and then join again these two tracks, the two parallel tracks that kind of go to the left to the fishing, farming, and forestry industries. So as I said, the same is true for the reverse. So we can have trains coming from the regional track on the left here and the regional track on the right here, as well as the fishing, the triple F industrial area down here. And all those pathways will lead back towards the industrial train cargo terminal over in the bottom over here. Next, we have the cargo terminal in the transport hub. And this is actually the second time that I filmed this segment. You'll notice a cut between this segment and the one I just did. And the reason for that is that I actually found a problem with something that I did, and that ties into the confusion that we talked about earlier with all the different tracks that we have. So if we take a look, we have the cargo terminal here, and we have one track going off to the right. And that track, if we follow the lower segment of that track, will go down and eventually connect to the line going to the industrial area. Or it can split off and go up across the overpass and then down towards the regional train network going right out of the city. Train traffic leaving the terminal here can go off to the left, and then it will go and eventually curve down and go towards the Triple F industrial area across the city. Now this little segment of track that I had originally added in, I actually cut in and added that in the previous section. It's not connected to the right track. It should be connected to this track right here in the middle of these three, because this track does not go to the cargo train terminal. It actually goes towards the industrial area over here. So functionally, it's pretty much the same as this connection right at the top right here. I don't want to do that. It's the same as this connection up at the top here. So I think the only option that I have is to actually split off from here and go underground and connect up to the track across here. And I think that's what I'm going to do. And the reason for that is that will make sure that this transport hub, the cargo terminal in the transport hub, has access to regional train traffic coming from both the left-hand side and the right-hand side. So for right now, it has access to all of our train tracks other than the train traffic, the regional train traffic coming from the left-hand side. So I think that is something that I will do off camera, or maybe, yeah, I'll do it off camera, just so everybody knows exactly what I'm doing, and just so you can see, confusion. It's a little bit weird, but I think that is really the only option that we have to make sure that everything is connected together. Next, we have, what do we have here? We have the Metro Monorail Train Hub, and so this will be for our passenger trains. And our passenger trains have a couple options to them. So the hub itself has 2 tracks already built into it. So we have this one here. Let's go to the upper track. And this one here on the right-hand side goes nowhere. I think I'm going to delete some of it so that we can do the tunnel for the train I was just talking about. Or we have the option to go left, and that will go down and eventually, possibly maybe, lead to another transport hub somewhere down over here. But for right now, it just terminates right here and doesn't actually go anywhere. And then also we have the lower of the 2 tracks in the transport hub there. And the train can go on the right-hand side through the tunnel and then across over to here and then join the regional train track going right and out of the city. If it were to go left, it will just go along the track here, over the overpass, down here, and connect to the regional train track going left out of the city. So our train hub here has connection to both directions of the regional train network, as well as eventually the local train network down over across this way. Okay, lastly, we have the 2 train terminals in the farming, fishing, and forestry industries, the FFF. So these 2 train terminals actually combine together to 1 track, and then they split again just before the river and come up over to here. So our trains now have a few options for them. They can, on the left-hand track, they can split off again to the left, curve around here, and then eventually join the regional train traffic going to the left. Or they can go on the right-hand side and they can continue along here. So it's going to be a little bit confusing here because now we do have 3 tracks. So if it splits off to the right, this is for the passenger train going to the passenger hub right here. But we also have these 2 tracks coming along this way. And these are the 2 tracks that we first started with when we went and corrected the overpass support issue that we were having. So these 2 tracks, the one on the bottom, let's go start with that one. It'll go into the cargo terminal here, or it will go down and it will go, we can go up across the overpass to the regional train network to the right, or we can go down and across here and go to the industrial train terminal at the bottom. Similarly, the track above that, the upper of the 2 tracks coming from the FFF industrial area, can go and take this fork right here and go to the regional train track going to the right, or it can go straight across here and join the industrial train track going down to the bottom. And that just simply bypasses the cargo train terminal that's in the transportation hub right here. So that was a little bit complicated. I hope that explained any sort of questions that people might be having. It's a little bit difficult to kind of picture everything when you're doing little track by little track. The overall pictures is a little bit easier to see once it's all in. So I did come up with a solution that does not involve tunnels to connect our cargo terminal in the transport hub to the regional train traffic going off to the left. I'd actually noticed that occasionally I would see trains going through the transport hub here and actually not stop. So they would kind of bypass it and continue along the track. So I wondered if the same would be possible for trains going through the public transportation hub that we have here. So I thought an easy solution would be to just attach the train track going left out of the cargo terminal to the lower track of the public transportation hub here, because that is the track that just goes over the overpass here and out the city. So I did actually notice that it worked, and the cargo trains would actually just bypass the transport hub here without stopping and go straight to the cargo train terminal that we have here on the right hand side. And it actually looks like perfect timing. We are going to have a cargo train actually do that right now. So it is slowing down because there is a passenger train already in the terminal right now. So that is one of the downsides to having all these tracks and all these trains is that, occasionally there will be other trains on the track at the same time. So they'll have to stop. But for the most part, I think it will work out quite well. I've had it running for a little while now. And other than the slowdown every once in a while, there really isn't much of anything. There doesn't seem to be any, major issues with trains actually getting stuck other than when they have to slow down a little bit and wait for the other trains to go by. So we'll see how it goes, in the long term. But for now, everything seems to be running pretty smoothly the way we have it set up. And of course, with anything that you do in the game, things work until they don't. So we will cross that bridge when we get to it. But for now, like I said, everything's working out quite well. And I think that'll be it for this episode. I had actually planned on doing more of the transport hub itself and doing some of the detailing. It's kind of tough to see right now because a big fire just went through the area here, but we have to do some decorating. These trees are now, some of them are actually inside of the track and interfering with things like that. So I'd like to make some adjustments there and do some of that stuff. And I don't like the curves here. I want to smooth these out a little bit and small things like that. But this episode, I do actually do a little bit of editing as I go, so I kind of have an idea of how long the episode is. And I think this one's going to be just above an hour. So I think that is more than enough for an episode. So we will leave it here for now. And I will have another episode, I think, not really a part 2, but just maybe a general kind of overview of the city and do some small tweaks here and there just to get everything kind of set before we start another expansion project somewhere, wherever that might be. So thank you all very much for watching this episode. I apologize for the time in between this episode and the previous one. I would really like to try and make that shorter. Obviously, a month is quite some time in between, but we will have to kind of figure that out as we go. And like I said, my goal is to have episodes sooner, but we'll see how that works out. So thank you again, and I hope everybody enjoyed. If you liked or didn't like the video, let me know down below with a like or a dislike. Don't hesitate to leave any comments. If you liked the video, also don't hesitate to subscribe if you haven't already. And I will see everybody in the next episode.